Welcome to the River Life Church podcast. We hope you will be blessed by this week's message. For more information, please visit riverlife.org.sg.
Well, a very good morning to all of you, and to all moms, all grandmothers. Happy Mother's Day once again. Blessed are you. May the Lord strengthen your hearts. May the Lord enrich you to live such a legacy, a rich legacy of faith in the generations to come. You know, this morning you might be surprised with this message, as you will discover as we go along. But right now, I'm going to take a very quick poll, okay? A very quick poll. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being poor, 10 being excellent, how many of you would rate your relationship with your parents as a 10? Hands up. Some of you, I saw some hands. You would rate your relationship with your parents at a 10, which is excellent, it's great. Come on, hands up, hands up. Well done, well done, well done. How many of you would rate it as 5? That's a 5. No, you're sitting on the fence. 5? No? Some of you, okay, how many of you don't know what to think about your relationship with your parents? Everyone else? Okay. Well, this morning, let me just say that I'm going to extend this few minutes of sharing for us to evaluate our relationship, not just with our moms, but with our dads as well, parents. Have you ever realized how your relationship with your parents affect every other relationship in your life? It is the major forming factor in how you are going to relate all of life. You know, your style of relating is set at home. And even today as a grown-up, there are times when, you know, you might act in certain ways, react in other ways, and chances are you are still reacting to your parents. Fact is, many marriages today are also affected, and some are even ruined, because a spouse has never resolved a relationship with a parent. And they're taking it out on their wife, their husband, or their kids. And commonly you hear things, a statement that goes like that: you are just like your mom. You are just like your dad. Okay. So today we're going to head back to the Word, head back to what God has to say with regards to our parents. And the text that I've chosen is a very simple one, super short. It is in Exodus chapter 20, verse 12. This is the 5th commandment of the 10. Honor your father and mother, then you will live a long, full life in the land the Lord, your God, is giving you. Folks, whilst, you know, the first 4 commandments deal with our relationship with God, the 5th begins a series of commandments that addresses areas in our lives with one another. And right through it, you know, it talks about behaviors, human behaviors that creates the biggest roadblocks to peace, to the individual, to the families, and to society at large. And it is so significant, as you can see in the 10 Commandments. In the Ten Commandments, it is so significant that God begins this section of interpersonal relationship commandments. And he begins with the family. The family being the basic building block of society. And it is that very family, the very first institution that God has created. And that is why today the devil, Satan, continues to attack the family at its core. But the good news is this. Every one of us here can counter the attacks of Satan by going back to the Word, obeying His Word, and His guidelines for family relationships and all relationships at large. The title of my message this morning is Honoring My Parents. And as I alluded earlier, today we're going to spend a few minutes evaluating and examining our relationship with our moms and our dads. Regardless of what you thought about your relationship at the poll that I gave you earlier, let the Word of God help you examine. What does it mean to honor our parents? Folks, there really is no time limit, no age limit to this commandment. You can be 60 years old today and your parents could be 85. The commandment stands, honor your father and your mother, especially if they're still alive. We're supposed to honor them. A quick word here to our parents. If you want to be honored, you must be honorable. Don't drive your kids nuts by being unpleasable. But the Bible addresses parents separately, and that's another sermon altogether for another occasion. But to honor our parents, to honor, the very word honor simply means to elevate one's status, to value highly, to promote, to give respect and admiration. And when I value, I understand the significance of. The way you honor your parents will change as time goes by. And depending on what life stage you're in, and this morning I believe there's a whole different representation of people of all ages of different life stage. So depending on what life stage you're on, the emphasis on how you honor your mom and your dad is a little different. So let's begin. As a child, I honor my parents by obeying and respecting them. Ephesians 6:1 tells us, children, obey your parents. This is the right thing to do because God has placed them in authority over you. Respect for authority begins at home. It's not anywhere else. And this is a critical lesson that every child must learn because it determines how well they're going to do in school, in their career, in life. The child who grows up saying that nobody tells me what to do is going to have a hard time. Many times in our lives, we will have to do what others tell us to do, regardless of whether we want to or not. Learning to obey from childhood helps to establish a lifetime pattern of obeying rules, principles, and laws in school and society. Paul goes on to expand this principle in Colossians 3:20. Children, obey your parents in the Lord in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Our obedience is a result of our obedience to God, and it pleases Him. Even Jesus, the very Son of God, obeyed His parents. So the command for us to honor our parents also includes not just obeying, but respecting them, treating them with respect. For many of us here, our parents who have yet to know Christ, the window to our faith is through the way we relate to them and our attitude towards them. And I would say here, folks, examine your speech. Examine how you talk to them, your tone, your volume, your mannerism. Are we speaking to them respectfully, or are we normally speaking to them in a defiant manner? Do we talk back? Examine our attitude towards them. It says a lot about our character. Do we relate to them in a I know better kind of attitude? Do we roll our eyes often at them? And even if your parents have fallen short, the commandment states we are still to respect them. And I'm going to address how we're going to relate to our parents who have done us wrong in the past a little later. So as a child, the emphasis in honoring my parents is by obeying and respecting them. Now, as a young adult, I honor my parents by accepting and appreciating them. The fact is this, the older you get, you're going to begin seeing a lot more of their hang-ups and their flaws. And it becomes so much more important for you to accept them despite these flaws. And you should remember, there are also things in your life and my life that have disappointed them or have embarrassed them. Perhaps some of you say, why should I accept my parents? I didn't have a choice. Neither did they. The fact of the matter is this, you have them and they have you. And that's why acceptance is important, it's so vital. And that's what family is about. You cannot choose your family, you cannot choose them, but you can choose to accept them. Family is about acceptance. But acceptance doesn't mean that I ignore their mistakes. Acceptance isn't endorsing or agreeing with everything they did. The accepting that I'm talking about here is this. That our acceptance of our parents is about realizing that God used them to give you life. This is something that no one else in the world can do except your mom and your dad. And regardless of how they treated you or the kind of parenting skills that they used, God chose them to bring you into the world. Your parents gave you life. Please don't allow their failures or mistakes to take the life out of you. And the accepting that we're talking about is also about listening to what they have to say. Listening to what they have to say. You know, as young adults, you're not bound by their advice, but you don't despise. Your parents have experienced and have known a lot more that you've yet to. Proverbs 23:22 spells it out so clearly. Listen to your father who gave you your life, and do not despise your mother. You have the courtesy of listening to them. Don't tune them out. And as young adults, make every effort to really listen and to value their input, rather than to pick and choose what you want to hear or what you want to do. Honoring them by accepting also includes forgiving. Fact of life is this. When sinful people live together under the same roof, you're bound to hurt each other, intentionally or unintentionally. And it's easier to blame our parents for our problems than to honor them. So much easier. And today, can I say that if you're still hurting and bitter about some things in your growing up years that your parents have done or said, you're still allowing these sentiments to shape your life. I invite you to release that anger, that bitterness, and to forgive, and release that forgiveness. Proverbs 20:20 puts it this way: that God puts out the light of the man who curses his father or mother. Bitterness is self-destructive. It always hurts you more than the person you're bitter against. God gave you, your parents, for a purpose. And He can even take that hurt and turn things around if you allow Him and if you would respond in the right way. And so we honor our parents when we forgive them for what they did wrong, and we choose to forgive. You know, God says that not only do I accept my parents, the good and the bad, I also appreciate them. Some of you here had super parents, and it's so easy to appreciate them. For others, it is a challenge. And I would suggest that there are at least two very simple things that you could appreciate your parents about, regardless of how they were. And the first is this: you can appreciate their effort. You have heard from the clip, parenting is demanding. Parenting is exhausting. It's 24/7. And as a mother of two, I had a renewed appreciation of what my mom or my parents went through after I became a mom some 22 years ago. When was the last time you thanked your parents for putting up with you? Who else would have put up with you all the time? You can also appreciate their sacrifice. No doubt about it. Many of us had parents who scraped, who saved, who sacrificed to provide and care for them. How often have they chosen to do without many things so that you could enjoy the comforts and luxuries which they didn't? So we should appreciate the sacrifice. And for some of us here who had grown up with stay-home moms, let's not forget the opportunity cost to their career advancement when they chose to give up their jobs for your sake so that they could just simply dedicate their life and to raise you wholeheartedly and totally. Folks, let's fast forward 10 years or so. You are now an older adult, a middle-aged. And that's assuming, that we have been doing our best to obey, to respect, to accept and appreciate. And now, as an adult, I honor my parents by affirming and not abandoning them. By affirming and not abandoning them. For many parents, the older they get, the less respect they get. They're no longer as demanded, wanted as before in the marketplace. It's that stage of life when, over the years, many of their friends will pass on. Their grown-up children have got married and are so busy with their own families. Truth is, they might often be living very lonely lives. Lonely as empty nesters. And much as they celebrate that their children have grown and have got married, being an empty nester brings and surfaces a big life adjustment for many of our parents. And there was this young lady whom I was mentoring. She had just got married, and she says, I wonder why my mom keeps calling me and checking in on me. And I said, so-and-so, do you realize, can you pause for a moment to know and to realize that your mom misses you without telling you? And so I know there are many young adults here who are newlyweds, whether you're a son or a daughter. Please check in on your moms and your dads. Oftentimes they may not tell you openly that they're missing you, but they do. Because for so many years, you have been in the house. And now that you have married and you're gone, there is a vacuum that I think they're learning to cope as well. And oftentimes our aged parents, they have needs other than the material. In fact, some of their deepest needs are not material in nature, and they are often unexpressed. Everyone thrives on affirmation, but affirmation that is given in the context of a very close relationship is so much more powerful. Our parents have a great need, a desperate need, a need to know that they have made a positive contribution to your life. They need to feel and to know that. And let them know through your actions, through your words. How do you do that? You affirm your parents by making time for them and staying in touch with them. You know, we're in this season of Malaysia Boleh, so in that, I'm just writing on it. Let us just pause and to just watch this clip.
Chả có bộ quan tiêu đuổi kia ấy.
Ý năng à, nhà bộ yên, nhà chơi công cho, tôi cho bộ kia xí lôi lại à.
Lôi à, chúng tôi cả lúc công à, chỉ để ta bỏ chỉ cháu hô à.
Lôi học sẽ ăn chưa? Ý à, nhà bộ yên ấy, ý chỉ có sinh ý à, là做零件，ý等咱的政府啊，都有生意来往，美國啊、香港啊，都有一本八老豆啊。 có quá ya từ năm sau là bữa chỉ kinh xin chủ.
Cảm ơn Sala bề phai à.
Hoa, bí bài kia họ, ý là doctor lại, ở London à, là specialist à, hàm ya, cardiology, ý chính gạo thanh rồi à.
Anh ấy gạo à.
Là bí出來有一個 doctor 本好誒，是咧，你找我安怎？
我特別拍電話伊哦，伊真無閒嘅哦，伊若喺啲回家樓做工吼，又淡薄過分啦。 真出名嘅回家樓，我都唔知影叫佢名吼。到特別吼，伊一年內面會賺到差唔多450千哦。
是咯，我係驚，伊一刀開刀啊，會賺20千英鎊啊，一日會開2個啊。
係咪貴讀得睇？
英啊，英，你係驚哩？
我驚好啊，我驚係嚟載我了咯。
在咯，
是咯，真麻煩哦，逐擺去倒落都愛帶我去行哦。
你再隨來哦。
乖囝來了，乖囝，你來，我早晨阿亮他們家。
媽好喎。
好啊。
媽，cho nên látคือกินม้าlớn hả?
Nhưng mà lớn chín ninh vậy.
Affirmation is not something that money can buy. Much as our parents can celebrate the successes of their children, but they need you. They need your affirmation of your time, of your words, of your attention. Some of us here today ought to pick up the phone and call our parents more often. Some of us ought to take time off from our busy pursuits and spend time with them more often. And I would encourage you to share all the details of your life with them. They are very interested. Affirming them also involves asking for their advice even at their age, listening to counsel, and just communicating the fact that, Mom, Dad, I value your input. Proverbs 3:27 tells us, do not withhold good from those who deserve it when it is in your power to act. Affirm your parents to the best of your ability for the rest of your life, for as long as they live. They won't be around always. We honor our parents by affirming them, and we honor by not abandoning them, but caring for them. 1 Timothy 5:8 says that the way you and I treat our elderly parents is a demonstration of our faith. If anyone fails to provide for his own, and especially for those for his own family, he has denied the faith by disregarding its precepts and is worse than an unbeliever who fulfills his obligation in these matters. That's strong rebuke. It is our sole responsibility to care for our parents. God intends for us to continue to honor our parents long after we leave home, and perhaps even more as they age. And when they require us to care for them so much more physically and perhaps even support them financially, God says that's part of being a Christ follower. Paul continues to tell us in 1 Timothy 5, verse 4, they should put their religion into practice by caring for their own family and so repaying their parents and grandparents, for that is good and acceptable before God. Do you realize that filial piety came straight from the Bible? It is not something Asian. The Bible tells us so clearly. And that may mean many different things, folks. It can mean fixing, repairs in their home. It can mean ensuring their safety when they're alone, accompanying them for medical appointments. It might just mean taking them out for a meal, treating them to a meal. Even if your parents are well off, I think your parents would really appreciate you buying them a meal. Just simply pampering them. So there can be all kinds of applications depending on your situation and your parents' needs. The point is, it's your responsibility and mine to make sure that they're cared for. Friends, in some ways, I live with you could say, a weight of regret. And I must admit that I could have done so much more, especially for my father, to honor my father, who passed away some 16 years ago. This is a quick summary of my relationship with my father. I've never known a tender, loving moment between my mom and my dad. They live under the same roof, but they live in separate rooms. The norm is to witness domestic violence. And these fights would go on, years and years, even after all 7 of us as children become adults and we have our own families. And I remember distinctly, as a preschooler I was probably about 5 or 6. Don't ask me why, but my dad would take me on his dates with another woman. And I would be bribed with lollies, sweets, and candies so that I can keep mum of this extramarital relationship. And so that's the kind of situation that I lived with growing up as a child. Another distinct memory I had was when my oldest brother introduced us to Christ. And being very young, all 7 of us became Christians, and of course we all have our different spiritual journeys later on. Dad was very steeped in another faith, and he was dead against us becoming Christians. And there were so many times when he caught us going to church or reading the Bible, our Bibles would get torn we would be belted. And I still remember being a little girl, hands being tied up and, being held and just belted. And remember the old-fashioned bottle drinks with those sharp caps? Many of us would if he feels up to it, we would just have to kneel on those bottle caps for as long as he pleased. And so that was the kind of scenario and what it was like for me growing up with my father. And though I have forgiven, truly, I have forgiven my father for all that has happened over my growing up years, I have allowed the memories to determine the extent of how I honor when he was still alive. I even found comfort in the fact, and justified the fact that, after all that has happened, I've already forgiven him. That's a great step, right? Well done. I even justified that a minimal, effort to just honor him is good enough. I mean, what do you expect, This is the kind of life I had growing up. So my lack of honor affected the way I treated him when he was still alive. And folks, this brings me to the very heart of my message to you today. Having a heart that honors. Having a heart that honors. 1 Peter 2:17 says that, honor all people, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. For many of us, we think that honor is something that goes to people who deserve it, who earn it. Just like we think, trust, love, respect, and honor are all earned. Do you realize what the Bible says in 1 Peter 2:17? Honor all people. This includes those who don't deserve it. This includes honoring those who didn't even earn it. God's command for us to honor our parents has no exception clause. There are no buts. This is not a suggestion or a request. It is a command. Sitting there, you might say, what if my mom or my dad abused me? Or, they were like strangers, they were distant. And what if they failed me? What if my mom or my dad abandoned me because they split, they divorced? Do you know the agony they put me through? And so forth. God says it plainly, folks. Honor your father and your mother, regardless of how well or how poorly they have done as parents. There are two ways that you and I can bring an inheritance into our lives. One is through honor, the other is through unforgiveness. You bring an inheritance into your life, and you bring an inheritance from your parents and past generations by what you connect to. By what connects you to them, that is your inheritance. Friends, ever wondered when we sing, we will give you glory and honor, where do you get that glory, that honor, that power to give unto God? Ever wondered? It's like Bill Gates saying, Bill Gates, I give you money. However much you and I have to give to God is a scrap. Except for the fact that I understand that he first honored me even though I was unhonorable. In doing so, God changed something about me. In doing so, God changed something in my relationship with him. He changed something about our relationship. And that is what honor does. Honor changes a relationship. Honor reaches out into your life and says, I transfer the status of my life and elevate you. And that's what the Lord has done to us. He has honored us despite the fact that we are not honorable. We are now sons and daughters of the Most High King. We are now co-heirs. We are now co-laborers with Christ. We are part of God's royal family. Your status has been elevated because of what God has done in our lives. And so as a result, you and I now have the capability to give honor in a relationship. And just like, the kind of awe and honor that high-ranking people in the world can give, you and I now can do the same because you have the freedom of who you are in Christ. And you can bring honor to a relationship, no matter what others say or do or how you're treated. And here's why we honor all people. Because I will never allow the way you conduct yourself to conduct me. I will not allow how respectful you are to determine how respectful I am. And even if you are untrustworthy, that's not going to prevent me from living in an honest and open and empowering way towards you. And your character flaws will never determine the core of who I am. And no matter how, whether I'm not going to allow how honoring you are to determine how honoring I am. Friends, all of God's commandments, they're given for our good. But this one especially is highlighted by God because of a given promise. The promise that He brings when we obey. The commandment with a promise. So true that, we all understand by now that a bitter and resentful heart produces all kinds of medical ailments. And no surprise that people who get along well with their parents have less stress in their lives. And that's why God promises that when we honor our parents, life will be better for us, with more peace and more joy, and we extend and lengthen our lifespan. Now, does that mean that God's going to promise all of us to live till 92? 92, well and active. Friends, do you know that apart from honoring your parents, there are other factors that's going to affect how long you live, how you take care of yourself, what you eat. But I imagine that the length of our God-appointed mission on earth plays a big part. The purpose that God has for you, the mission that you have, God knows how much time you need, and I believe God will extend and your lifespan accordingly. Okay. Just looking back now, I believe that God has sent me and blessed me on a longer-term mission here on earth. Because, friends, I almost didn't make it almost 50 years ago. Because I was an oops baby, conceived by accident, so to speak. I was the seventh and the last, and my mom, years later told me that she attempted to abort me by all ways and means. But I stuck. So you can imagine growing up was just more traumatic than terrific for me. And as you can imagine, the root of rejection runs very deep in my life. The frequent caning and having an emotionally distant mom was the norm for many years. from childhood all the way to my teenage years. And in short, I had no idea what mother-daughter bonding was like. Zilch. The bond was totally missing. And it was years later when I underwent healing. And I walked in my healing. And I lived in my healing. That I come to understand and appreciate why my mom did what she did. That I finally understood the pain, the agony, the frustrations, that she had in a loveless marriage, and she was simply taking it out on me. And so from that place of healing, I made a choice. This is my second chance, remember? I didn't do what I was supposed to do with my father, and so my second chance now. So I made a choice to go beyond just forgiving my mom, but I took active steps to honor my mom. And to this day, whether it's, delivering food, getting food for her, pampering her, medical appointments, and etc., etc. And today, I celebrate a good relationship with her, and I have a picture of her, actually. Yeah, that's my mom. 83. She's 83 this year. And to this day, we have a great relationship. She showers me and my family with a love that she knows how to. And so, friends, when we honor our parents, we, the children, are the beneficiaries. This is the commandment with a wonderful promise that life will go better when we simply obey it. You see, when we forget and we forgo God's design for relationships in the family, we experience more of the pressure and miss out on the pleasures. Sin always robs, but obedience always enriches us. Any fractured or broken relationship in the family, they are a target of the enemy. And you and I empower the enemy when we allow relationships to be taken down, to remain broken, and to be taken down to a very functional level. Honor is most tested in times of challenge, in times of failure, in times of disagreement. But we must never allow that to affect our choice to honor. Friends, when there is no honor, people are afraid. And when people are afraid, they want control. 1 John 4:18 tells us this: perfect love casts out all fear. Likewise, fear casts out all love. Having a heart of honor is just so vitally important because it comes straight out from heaven. Honor is a currency of heaven. It counters the work of the enemy to destroy and take down relationships. Honor your father and your mother. Honor all people. Give honor wherever you go. When you do, you bring heaven to earth. You bring heaven to earth, and you keep heaven here on earth. Let Christ be honored in all our relationships. Let us pray. Father, this morning, I just want to pray for every person here in every life stage. Would you begin to speak to all of us? Speak to us right to the very core of our being, of who we are in you. that we can begin to examine our relationship with our father, with our mother.
Thank you for listening to the River Life Church podcast. If you would like more information on who we are, please visit riverlife.org.sg.